So this session we're going to be looking at social media and your child's mental and spiritual health. And so we touched on lots of different risks that were in the last session, risks that are out there and the importance of it. My daughter made fun of me for accidentally mispronouncing TikTok. And so we'll learn some about our, that face page and Tic Tac and all those kinds of things. So we'll try not to mispronounce things. And so what we're going to look at is, and we talked about technology in general, and we talked about the parent's responsibility. And this is a different verse, but this is, and we'll actually talk about this verse on Sunday, but we're not covering the same subjects, but we're actually using the same verse. But really, it's that the last part of this verse is important, that you, your son, your grandson, all the days of your life and your days may be prolonged. And so we're teaching our children the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord has commanded us to observe. And so that's our responsibility. And we looked last session about when we're supposed to do this. But one of the things that I want to point out is that children, and I think I said a little bit about this, but children need boundaries. Now, they may tell you they don't want boundaries, but they really do need boundaries. If you look at a child that has no boundaries in their life, you're going to see a child that is maladapted. They have issues that they're struggling with because they don't have the guidance that's necessary. And so children may say they don't like it, but those things, those boundaries, those are things they need, and it provides them security. And it helps them as they navigate life. Because the thing that we're dealing with on social media specifically is we're navigating a minefield of inappropriate and harmful content. And I think about, like you might have seen an old war movie and somebody's trying to work their way across the minefield and where's it at? And if you make a mistake, then you get blown up kind of thing. And so here, we are navigating a minefield of inappropriate content. I'm telling you right now, if you ran indiscriminately across a minefield, there's a high likelihood you're going to hit a bomb and you're going to die. Well, with social media, there is a high likelihood you're going to run across inappropriate and harmful content. It's going to happen. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure. So there's a problem. So we have to understand that there is inherently a problem with social media. And I think that our society has experienced a problem somewhat similar to social media, albeit a little different. So let's, if you would, walk with me for an analogy for a moment. Take yourself back to the 1940s and 1950s, and we're going to look at smoking. How many people, what percentage of people do you think smoked? Now, I don't really have the answer to this, but there were a lot of people. Most people smoked in the 40s and 50s, right? Doesn't mean everybody, but lots of people.
The weirdest thing is, if you look at like old Nick at Night commercials or old commercials, they would have like cartoon characters and other people smoking. I used to be like,
even in the cartoon. So the Nick at Night stuff. They're playing the cartoons from the 60s where all these cartoon characters are smoking because society, everybody smoked. Not everybody, but I mean it was widespread, it's prevalent. And I would say it was as prevalent. Smoking is as prevalent back then as social media is prevalent today. In fact, I think social media probably has it beat. Now, did people think, what was people's viewpoint of smoking? Well, okay. They realized that smoking wasn't good for you, so then the cigarette companies would put up ads and say, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. And you've got this guy there holding it because they've got a filter and it's the cleanest tobacco and all this other kinds of stuff. So people really knew it wasn't healthy for you, but they didn't really know just how bad it was. And then as society moved forward and people started realizing, they were going, wait a minute, this really is addictive. This really is bad. So this smoking is addictive and it is really harmful to your health. As we're realizing, look at all this. Look at all the heart disease. Look at all the lung cancer. Look at all the esophageal cancer. Look at that. This is a real problem. It's addictive and it's harmful to your health. And so what I would submit to you is as smoking was to the 40s and 50s, addictive and harmful to health, I would say social media is the same thing. Social media is addictive, and we're going to look at why that is the case. And it's harmful to your mental health. And it is also harmful to your spiritual health. And it could potentially, if it's addictive, it could be harmful to your physical health as you're not doing things. You're not getting out and moving around and running around. kids would rather not go to camp or rather not play sports. They'd rather just sit there and play on their phone. So it is also harmful to physical health, but we're not going to focus on the physical aspect. We're going to focus on the mental health and the spiritual health. So I want to show you just how bad it really is. So there's a company out there, and the name of the company is Bark, B-A-R-K. And I'll have some resources for you towards the end of this. So, but they put out this chart, and there were some things here that really startled me. So, on social media, 88% of tweens, and so that is the not yet teenager age children, and 94% of teens expressed or experienced violent subject matter or thought. So they encountered. So they're either the one that was saying it in a threatening fashion, or they heard or saw people threatening one another. 45% of tweens, 66% of teens engaged in conversations about depression. Now, if you have your child or grandchild and they are experiencing items of depression, do you want them talking about depression with strangers on the internet? Is that who you want them seeking guidance and counsel from? But that's where they're getting it if we're not engaged. Bullying, 76% and 82%. So I'm just going to read the top one there. 82% of teens experience bullying as a victim, or they did it, they saw it, or it was being done to them. 82%. That's a really high number. So our children are out there, and then they experience it or they see it. Now, I can tell you right now, to this day, I am a grown man, married with children, and there is a situation from my high school years where I remember watching a guy be very rude and antagonistic and say hurtful things to a girl who was in my high school class. And I remember he was probably as far away as I am from that door back there. So I wasn't right up next to it, but I was watching this, and as he was antagonizing her, and I remember I didn't go over and stop the situation, and because I was headed to my class, and I knew the guy, and he was kind of a bully, and I didn't go over and say something. And I'll tell you, here I am at this stage in life, and it still bothers me that I didn't say something. Still bothers me. Now, our children are exposed to this in large quantities if they're in the wrong place. Drugs and alcohol. 91% of teens said that they were engaged in some conversation where someone's bringing up drugs or alcohol. Self-harm and suicide. 2/3 of them were involved in some sort of, where they know somebody who is involved in self-harm. I can tell you, I didn't even know what self-harm was when I was a kid. I never heard of cutting. That was not something that was, I wasn't exposed to it. I didn't know about it. So I certainly never thought about doing it. I didn't even know it existed. Who would do that? Why would you hurt yourself? And 2/3 of teens know somebody or involved with somebody who online who has done some level of self-harm. Sexual content. 88% of teens encountered nudity or content of a sexual nature. I actually think this number is low. Now, I can tell you that on my regular day at school, I did not encounter nudity. Now, there were conversations that were had at school that were inappropriate, but I didn't encounter some of these things that were being seen. And so, when you think about all these risks, cyberbullying and addiction and screen time and loss of privacy and all these kinds of things, where do you go? So, there was a study, this is a Pew study, in fact. This is Pew Research Center. This is from 2022. And the question they asked, now this is very interesting, because it shows perspective. So they say, this is the question: what percent of teens who say social media had a mostly positive, neutral, or mostly negative effect on? That was the question. So how do you think social media affects people your age? A full third of them said, oh, I think it's negative. Then the question is, what about you? How do you think it affects you? Only 9% thought it affected me, right? So it affects everybody else, but not me. It's mostly positive for me. And so if you think about from an addiction standpoint, people might realize that's not good, but I really don't want to give it up because I like it. So I'm going to make it sound better than it really is, because I'm not really addicted. I could quit whenever I want. I can see the addiction, the problems over there. But when I look in the mirror, I don't see the problem with me. Isn't this really a problem with everybody who has this, where I can see the log in your eye? Oh, there's a speck over there in Dave's eye. Let me go get that out. Right as I'm walking around with a telephone pole sticking out of my eye. So, and this is the biblical principle right here. Is that they don't see the problem in themselves. They can see it when you ask it in somebody else. And so social media, they recognize that there is a negative effect. Now I get to the slide about Tic-Tac and Face Page here. So this is what teens are using. These are the apps that they're using from 2014, 2015 to 2022. Now I didn't have any newer statistics in 2022, so it's 3 years old. So I can tell you these things have changed again. But if you look at Facebook here, 71% of teens were using it in 2014, 2015. It's now down to 32 in 2022, and I can tell you if you follow this trend, it's going to be about right here in 2025. All right? They're hardly using it at all. And if you look at TikTok, nobody was using TikTok in 14 because it didn't exist. And now 67%. Now look at YouTube up there. 95% of teenagers are on YouTube. 67% of them are on TikTok. 62% of them are on Instagram. That's gone up. 59% of them are on Snapchat. You want to know where they're at in 2022? Now, some of these changed a little bit, but those top four, that's where they're at. They're not on Facebook. That's for old people. They're not on Twitter. They're not on Twitch. They're not using WhatsApp. They're not using Reddit. They're not using Tumblr. I mean, Tumblr dropped down to 5%, and so I don't even know what the usage is now necessarily. But you look at here, roughly 1 in 5 teens say that they are almost constantly on YouTube. Only 2% say that's the case for Facebook. So of the people, so they asked these kids, how often are you on Facebook? Only 2% said almost constantly. If I asked this question of this room, I would venture to guess that this number would be a little higher for us because we don't fall in this group. And you look, I do not use. 67% of teenagers don't even have a Facebook account. Don't even have it. They don't use it at all. But where are they at on YouTube? They're constantly on or several times a day. 60% of teenagers say that they're either always on it or they're on it several times a day. 60% of teenagers, it's a constant. Think about what YouTube's model is. The next slide. That's the same slide as the last one, sorry. Parents more likely to be concerned. Now this one's a very interesting one to me because this shows where parents don't recognize what the actual threat is to their children. Or if they might be somewhat aware, they don't really focus. So I want you to look at this. So this is the percentage of parents, of teenagers, who say that they are worried about their teen's use of social media could lead their teen doing the following. So I'm worried social media might cause my teen to. All right, so 46%. So nobody is over 50%. So that means that of this study, less than half of parents thought that social media would lead to any negative behavior. I'm going to say that again. Less than 50% of parents in this study thought that social media would lead to any negative behavior. Realistic? That's not realistic at all. Now look at the things they're worried about. So of the things that they're most concerned about, they're like, I don't want to be exposed to that pornography. That's what I'm concerned about. Okay. Wasting too much time. I'm somewhat concerned. Being distracted from completing their homework. Sharing too much about only a third of them were worried about their children sharing too much about their personal life. If I want to stalk you, all I have to do is go to your social media page and look. You're going to tell me everything about you that I want to know and then some. I'm going to know where you're at. I'm going to know your favorite restaurant. I'm going to know your friends. I'm going to know what school you go to. I'm going to know what your hobbies are, what your interests are. And then, I can craft the very best artificial person that you would just love to connect with for me to be able to groom you to come and get you. Feeling pressure to act a certain way. Only less than a third thought they were concerned about peer pressure. Being harassed or bullied. Now remember those statistics. A full 2/3 were bullied. Only a third of parents are concerned about it. Less than a third, 29%. Only 28% are worried about anxiety or depression or low self-esteem. So parents, this tells me that parents don't get it. Well, that's the reason why we're having this conversation right now, is because we we don't recognize what the risk is. So here, 46% they're concerned. Only 46% say, I'm worried about some pornography. Well, let's look at pornography. Let's just pick the first one. 73% in this one study, 73% said that they were exposed to pornography either accidentally or that they encountered pornography. Now, the other study had it, I'll tell you, and this is a study. If you ask a child, hey, have you run across pornography? Do you think all the children are going to be honest and say, oh, yeah. What are they? Most of them. So if they're willing to say yes, it's because it's so obvious that those folks are saying yes. The children would be inclined to go, oh no, I've never run across it. I've never seen it. So that's why I think this number is skewed on the low side. And so the next one is, look at these percentages. So of that same study, 15% of children who were under the age of, so 10 and under, 15% encountered pornography. All right, that may actually be, I still think it's low because remember, it's self-reported. The children are reporting this. 13 and younger, over half of them were exposed. Remember, parents, less than half of them were worried that their kids are seeing it. And here, more than half are actually admitting that they've run across it. And 17, this is that 73%, which I think is low. I think that number is higher. And so when you think about those kinds of behaviors, are you worried about those behaviors? Less than half of parents are. So here's another statistic that's a little startling. So 2021, again, some of these statistics, they don't do these studies all the time. 2021, there's something called sexting. Sexting is where you send a text picture of yourself of a sexual nature. Okay, wholly inappropriate, here it goes. Between 2016 and 2020, found that 19% of teens had engaged in this behavior. 35% had received a picture of a sexual nature from someone they knew. If 15% had forwarded one without consent. So here, these are the examples of those behaviors that children engage in that's risky, that's inappropriate, and potentially, if they put it online, never goes away. And here you have someone, you send a picture of a sexual inappropriate, because obviously they're teenagers here, so it's inappropriate. They're sending it to each other. And then somebody says, hey, man, check this out. And they forward it on to somebody else. 15% of them forwarded it without consent. Think about the damage that does to the child that took the picture. They don't have control over it anymore. It's gone. It's out there. Now, we were talking about financial sextortion. Here's the next slide. These pictures of these young men, these teenage boys, were all victims of financial sextortion. And every single one of them that are up on this slide, every single one of them killed themselves. Their names are Gavin Guffey, Riley Basford, Braden Marcus, James Wood, Evan Butler, Jordan DeMay, Carter Bremseth. There's more, but that's just the ones that are on this slide here. Every one of their parents were interviewed for a USA Today article this year in February. And every single one of these teens committed suicide within 24 hours of being threatened. Every one of them committed suicide within 24 hours. It doesn't give the parent a lot of time to be able to react to this. And even though, and some of them were shorter windows than that. So here's kind of how it starts. They get this random text or message or direct message on TikTok or Instagram or whatever their preferred platform is, and it'll say something like, hey, your pics are really cute, haha. And then, so here the guy's like, oh, thanks, whatever. And then it starts off very innocuous, and it seems like somebody who is a teenage girl. Now what happens, they use artificial intelligence to create this personality, to interact, to create a picture of a person. So they have pictures from other people who they have been exploiting or that they've harvested directly off of social media. And then what happens is, hey, I found your page through suggested friends, wrote in one exchange. Your pics are really cute. And so what they do is, once they establish some trust, they steer that conversation towards sexual topics and try to get them, or I try to get you to talk about something. And if they don't necessarily engage, then they send an unsolicited picture, nude photograph to that teenage boy. And then says, hey, send me one. I'll send you another. Please send me one. And so if he sends a picture, perhaps maybe wholly inappropriate or just partially inappropriate, maybe just him with his shirt off or something along those lines, then what they do is they leverage that. They get them to a different platform, they leverage that, and then the blackmail starts the moment that they send a picture that they shouldn't have sent. Now they threaten them with all sorts of stuff. Say, hey, I'm going to send this to all of your contacts. I'm going to send it to your mother and your father and your grandmother and your aunt and all of your classmates, and they're going to see this. Now, that's the worst thing that could ever happen in their mind. And it's certainly bad, but I mean, in their mind, they threaten them with the very worst. And they say, okay, so now if you don't pay a sum of money. Now, one of those boys on that picture there was blackmailed for $3,000. He didn't have $3,000. He didn't know how he was going to get it. And so they just kept pressing him. They wanted to create the situation so that there was so much pressure on that kid that he would find that money any way he could. Any way he could, he's going to find it. Well, he knew he couldn't get the $3,000, and he could not face the prospect of his picture being sent out there to the world. And so the only solution that he had was to kill himself. Now, that's a terrible situation. If this was just one situation, one problem, one kid, you'd be like, oh, that's a terrible situation. This happens, like, remember I said, this increased 5-fold. So this is prevalent, every single one of those kids. So people are using and leveraging social media to take advantage and prey on children. Was there anything inherently wrong with hitchhiking down the interstate to get where you're going? No. How many people do you see hitchhiking today? Almost none. Very, very few. I almost never see a hitchhiker because people realize this is potentially dangerous. Don't do this. And so then not only is it dangerous for the hitchhiker, it's also dangerous for the person who's picking them up. So now nobody wants to pick anybody up and nobody wants to hitchhike because they recognize the danger. Well, here's what I'll tell you right now. That's exactly what social media is being used for in some instances. Do we have that same care and concern? See, our children would be more likely to send an inappropriate text message of a picture of themselves than they would thumb down the road. I can tell you right now, if I could, throw a paintball out and hit a car as it drove by, I could get in that car, and there's probably a 99.9% chance that person's not going to do me any harm. But nobody does that because there's risk there. We recognize how severe the risk is. Likelihood's low, risk is very high. Well, in this instance, the likelihood is increasing and the risk is very high. So I want to put things in perspective for a moment. How much do you pay for social media a month? Nothing? You don't pay anything for social media? Man, best things in life are free, right? So they've given it to you for free. So here's the thing. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. I'll say that again. If you are not paying for the product, you are the product. So what they do is, and they being social media platforms, all of them do this, and some of them do it much better than others. ByteDance, which owns TikTok, and Instagram, those two are really good at it, but everybody's picking up on it. They were just the early leaders, and everybody else is moving. YouTube does it very well also. So they have algorithms, and their goal is they get paid by how many minutes, hours, how many people are watching that, because I can serve up ads to you. Oh, and it's not just ads that I'm serving up to you to make money. What else I'm also doing is I'm taking all of your information that you've given me. So all of your friends, all of your shopping habits, all the places that you go. You know when you carry your phone around, that app has permissions to see your location. So now I get to see every place that you go and what places you shop. And oh, I can see this person never goes to Walmart, they're a Target person. Or this person never goes to Target, they're a Walmart person. And then I can see what things they search for on their computer. You ever been on Facebook and looking for something and suddenly you see ads for the very thing that you were looking for elsewhere? Ever had that happen? How did that happen? I mean, just by coincidence, right?
That's the algorithm.
And so that's exactly right. They're using that to make money. You are the product. And if you are the product, then they're doing whatever they can do to make as much money off of you as possible. They're not interested in your well-being, and they're certainly not interested in your children's well-being. They're interested in how much money I can make. That's what they're interested in doing. And in doing so, here's what they look at. What information about you and things that you would not realize that they know about you, that they sell to advertisers, and they sell and package up to different companies. And second, how many ads that they can push in front of you. And so if I can get you to watch more, then I can sell more. How can I keep you staying online? Well, I'm going to make it as addictive as I possibly can. And so in that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it as addictive as I possibly can. Let's see, did I have another slide or no? Yeah, so here, I'll go through this. So so all the issues that we talked about with social media. So all this information is gathered by big tech that I was just talking about, and all this information also is available out there to strangers. And then they sell all this information for money, and it's constantly tracked, all of it. And nothing goes away ever. So big issues. Now, the thing when you start looking at how they get you on there, so let's talk about TikTok for a moment. And I don't remember my slides. You'll have to excuse me if we get to it. We'll just skip through it. With TikTok, here's how it works. I downloaded the app so I could see how, this is when TikTok first kind of became viral. Like, okay, let me see how this thing works. So I download the app, I got on there, it asks me some questions. It says, okay, what's your name, what's your email address? They're building a profile on me. Okay, what's your date of birth? Got to make sure that, so they now they know how old I am. And they also know what my gender is. Now they gave me some extra choices on gender that I didn't realize existed, but I selected the male one is what I selected. Okay, so now they know that I'm a male in my 40s and this is my contact information. Then they asked me, tell me some things. What things interest you? What things do you like? So I picked 2 or 3 topics that were random. Okay, and then I just wanted to see what it served up to me. And I intentionally, because I had read about the algorithm, I intentionally just started scrolling, and I would try to do it every like 3 seconds. So I tried not to stay any longer or any shorter on any app, and I was just seeing what it would feed me. And so what it did is it fed me a steady diet of the things I told it I was interested in. So it was like, I'm interested in wildlife. Okay, and it would show me pictures of wildlife or videos of wildlife. I'm interested in baseball, and it would show me pictures of whatever it was, right? And I was just scrolling through. Then what happened is I'm not kidding you when I say it was single-digit minutes and low single-digit minutes. Suddenly, a video popped up in there in the middle of this thread. It was like, yep, that was what I told you I liked. That was what I told you I liked. That was what I didn't stay on any one longer or shorter than the other one. And then suddenly it popped up a woman in a bikini doing some like she's I don't remember what she was doing. And I'm like, so I waited the 3 seconds. And then I flipped just like I did each and every one of them. But why would you suppose that it would put that in there? Well, no, temptation. It knows that I'm a 40-year-old man. So it knows that that other 40-year-old men, they spend longer time watching this. And you're only spending 3 seconds in every video. So I'm going to try to find something that will get your attention, that will keep you on that device. Now, if I were actually using it and I would be watching the videos, I would stay longer on the ones that I want to watch, the ones that catch my attention, right? And the ones that don't catch my attention, I scroll by those faster. So I'm training it to tell them, this doesn't keep me on the system longer, this does keep me on the system longer. And then they also know that, hey, you fit a similar profile to all these guys. You know what they're susceptible to? Let me send you some of their stuff randomly and see if you stay on it longer. Or maybe you watch the reel more than once. Now you've watched it 2 and 3 times. Now I know that you like this, and so I'm going to serve you up more of that. Now let's pause for a minute and let's think about a child. So now you have a child who maybe is dealing with some situation. Maybe because of their interactions on social media, they're depressed. And so suddenly, they don't call it teenage angst for no reason. Teenagers have issues with regulating their emotions for all of time as they're going through this hormonal changes. So now they're online, and so maybe they're susceptible to some of these things that are their depression or those kinds of things. So then TikTok's going to run that by them, and they might watch that 2 or 3 times. It's sad, and I watch it. Now, what happens when you watch something sad? Does it make you happy? What happens if you watch lots of really sad things? Does it make you really happy?
No.
So it makes you more sad, and then you watch more sad, and so they just drive you down. They don't care what hole they drive you into. It doesn't matter what hole you go into. The only thing that matters is that I get more time of your eyes on my app so I can sell more ads and I can get more information about you. So I'm going to drive you into whatever hole that you're most susceptible to. Wherever you're weakest at, that's what I'm going to give to you. If you're susceptible or you're weak to things of a pornographic nature, I'm telling you what you're going to see. You're going to see everything as close to that as TikTok's filters will permit. You're going to be fed all of that steady diet of garbage because I want to keep you on as long as I possibly can. And the same is true with any of those other ones that exist out there. So you are being manipulated to make more money. That's all that's going on. The more depressive, the more so that and when you think about TikTok, 90 to 95% of the videos that you see on TikTok are driven by the algorithm, that recommendation engine. So you're not picking, it's not like, oh, I want to go watch a video about X. No, 90 to 95% of those videos are given to you from them. And they are influencing you. And I don't know what the percentages are for YouTube, but it's the same types. Now, that may not be the content that you like the most. If you were to ask that depressed 13-year-old girl, is that what you do you like watching things that are depressed? No, I don't. But she spends time. It's not necessarily what you like, it's what you're most susceptible to. And that's the reason why, when we looked at with Instagram, that's the reason why they said that 33% of girls came away depressed after using Instagram. I think we need to let our children use more Instagram, don't you? Don't you think that's a great solution to it? I want to talk about the addictive nature of social media. So when we think about the addictive nature of social media, how hard is it for you to put your phone down? How hard is it for you to put your phone down? It's hard. Now, how many times do you check your phone every day? All the time, right?
One thing I'm kind of scared of about the phone that it has my not credit, but my banking card. What's so weird, I didn't even set it up. It told me one day, it did, but it's like, Carter, you want to set this up as Google Pay? I was like, I didn't actually put Google Pay on my phone, so now my phone just running through my money.
Oh yeah, listen, as much as they can get you engaged. That's right, as much as they can get you engaged. So when you think about the addictive nature of your phone, how much do you use your phone? How often do you pick your phone up? How many times do you check your phone? All the time, right? How far is your phone away from your person? How far? Seriously, okay. Dave has now moved his phone the furthest it's been away from him in the last. It is. Where is it? We carry it in our pocket or purse with us everywhere we go. We sleep next to it on our bed, right next to our head, right where it's charging, so I can get to it easily. Like, you think about the addictive nature, like I can't get away from it. I have to be there. So, and I want you to think about your behavior. When people post, so sometimes when people post a picture, how many likes did I get? How many comments did I get? I want to see how many people saw what I posted out there. There's an addictive nature to that. I want that. How many more likes do I have? How many more friends do I have? How many more? And it provides a relief, an escape from the world around us. So when you start thinking about, look, I want you to look at, so there was a book, Your Teenager is Not Crazy. It's an interesting book. And it talks about several characteristics when something is addictive. Now, we can apply this to any addiction that you want. Okay, so we could let's talk about alcohol addiction. We're going to talk about social media. All these apply the same. The first is, does the activity provide pleasure and give relief from unpleasant emotions? Okay, well, people drink their sorrows away, so it gives them a short-term pleasure, and they forget their troubles. So let's talk about social media. I can escape to my world away from the difficulties that I'm dealing with, and I can give relief from unpleasant. I can hide and ignore my problems. All right, that's the first stage. The second one is it requires increasing activity to satisfy. So what was a few minutes before is not enough. I need to have more minutes. I need to spend more time on social media. The third one is it makes a person distressed or uncomfortable when access is denied. Let me give you a quick example. I have 3 children. When I take their phone away, it tends to cause a little bit of distress in them. Why are you taking my phone away? Why is that always what you end up taking away from me? Don't take that away from me. Why? I didn't do it. Because it causes distress when you take it away. That addiction creates conflict with people, or it creates conflict with life responsibilities, where they spend more time focusing on their social media than doing that. Hey, can you take out the trash? I will in a minute. Can you take out the trash? Hey, have you taken out the trash yet? Just one more video. You've watched 750 in a row. Take the trash out. So it creates a difficulty for them to focus on. I'm not saying this happens in my house. That's not what I'm saying. So just it becomes difficult to set aside, despite my attempts to do so. Do you spend too much time on social media? You have all the self-control in the world in your household. You're the most self-controlled person in your house, or you should be. How about you children and grandchildren? Are children born with self-control? We know they're not. They are susceptible to addiction. And ultimately, if it dominates someone's life in both what they do and what they think about, then you've got a problem. And so we have to realize the people who we're involved with, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good morals. If our children are around that, that's what's going to happen. Now, my time is almost up, and I'm still... Okay, so here's what I want to focus on. So evil company corrupts good morals. And I want you to think about all that goes on the internet, and all that's out there, and all these influencers. And here's what I want to show. So we're going to talk a little about, this is not a statistics class, but there is a principle of causation and correlation. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you correlation, and I'll let you determine whether you think there's a causative effect here. So this is by generation, people affiliating themselves with LGBT in some respect. So the silent generation, okay, so this would be my grandparents. The silent generation, 1.7% of the silent generation has some LGBT affiliation. My parents' generation, the boomers, 2.7% of them. So it did go up some, but they're both less than 5%. Gen X, almost the same. That's my generation. Almost the same as the baby boomers, just a hint more. All right, all of us grew up without technology. Now, I started getting technology in my childhood years, working way up, but there was no social media. The millennials. Now, the millennials grew up with technology, but they didn't have social media right away because it wasn't out there, but they grew up, they were experiencing technology right away. These are people who were born in the 80s forward. So they had that, but they didn't have social media. But they are the early adopters of social media. These are the folks that are jumping on it quick. Now notice, do you see, like we're all about the 2.5% somewhere in here. Then suddenly it jumps to 11% among the millennials. Now that's really interesting to me, especially on the younger end. If you look at that, the younger they get, the more it's skewed. That's very interesting. 11%. More than 1 in 10 millennials identify as LGBT. Man. Now, you get to the Gen Z, and it's 20%, 1 in 5. So when you look at why this great increase in the number of people who are affiliated and associate with LGBT, why? Like, has it always been 20%, and these people have been suppressing their true nature of who they are? No, that's not the case. Is it genetic? No, it's not. But if you said you're born that way, how can you explain going from 1.7% to 20%? What do you suppose, what are these people doing that these people aren't doing? What are these people exposed to that these people aren't exposed to?
It's out more.
You see, if you have, so you're around, so then you have issues of social contagion. Folks that I'm around with and things that I see. You look, here's the next slide. I want you to look at the percentage. Flat, 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 flat. This is over time from 2012 to 2021 by generation. Almost unmoved, slightly moved. This one went from like 6% to 10%. That's the millennials that I was talking about. And in this one, this is a different year. This is a Gallup poll. It went from 10% in 2017. Wow, so all this social media stuff was blowing up right around this time. And it went to over 20%. It increased 100%. It fully doubled. So all of these things occurred, and you think, now I can't say, I didn't do the study myself and say with absolute certainty it is social media, but what I'll tell you is it's glorified. There's a saying, What one generation tolerates, the next generation embraces. Now, I don't remember where I read that at. I didn't make it up, but I love that quote because it's absolutely true. What one generation tolerates, the next generation embraces. Think about from a morality standpoint. You think about what how society viewed shacking up. Oh, it's terrible, horrible, awful. Nobody does it. Having a child out of wedlock. Oh, we've got to send her away to a different place. No one can see this. Two, it worked its way to, okay, well, we tolerate shacking up. To now it's the norm. What one generation tolerates, the next generation embraces. Well, with LGBT, it's not what one generation tolerates, the next one embraces. It's what one generation promotes and glorifies, the next generation takes wholeheartedly and moves forward with. And so we see these things. Now, there's not a lot of time left, but I kind of want to finish out. I've got 2 or 3. When you think about what's the difference between a bad kid and a great kid? So what's the difference between a bad kid and a great kid? Here's what I'll submit to you the difference is. Now, I don't want you to think about from a social media standpoint. I'll make that application in just a second. Think in your mind, think of somebody you grew up with that you know is a bad kid. Okay? Think about a bad kid. Now think about a great kid. What's the difference between those two kids?
Relationship to their parents.
Okay? So their home, their influence, right? So you said their home, relationship to their parents. What you said is the things that influence them. That's what you've answered. So their situation, their environment, what influences them, the people who they hang out with, the people who, so that environment that they're around. So when we put our children in social media with the best of the best and the worst of the worst, and you tell me, the difference between a good kid and a bad kid is the environment that they're around and the decisions that they make. So when we throw our children to the wolves, so to speak, we have to expect them to have some sort of damage, some sort of problem. So what I'll tell you is there is no business, zero business, negative business, no middle schooler or younger ever needs to be on social media, period. End of story, no questions asked at all. Now, at what point should a child be allowed to be on social media? We'll talk about that in the next session some. And I have some thoughts on that. But our responsibility as a parent is to protect our children's physical health, to protect our children's emotional and mental health, and to protect our children's spiritual well-being. Our job is to get them back to God and put them back to heaven, because you cannot unsee something once it's been seen. You cannot unexpose yourself once it's been exposed to you. And so that's really the issue. So does anybody have any questions?
You said you're 40, right?
I'm in my 40s. I'm a little older than 40 now. So
No disrespect. But
at the
okay,
time.
it's like, me and you, when we grew up, I grew up, I'm like 35. Now, this is the thing that kind of makes me mad. Everybody says, well, you got to protect your kids, but you can't protect your kids when they go to college. You can't protect your kids when they be out around their
Oh,
friends.
that's a great
So
question.
now how do you...
Come on.
now.
Okay, so that's actually,
you
you know
don't
what, thank you. I would pay you to help me. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next session. So the first session was understand the risks. The second one is its impact on mental health. The third one is what do we do? Thank you for teeing that question up. I'll have 45 minutes to answer that question, okay?
Different type of music you listen to, different type of...
Oh, sure. That's the influence.
I'm just curious, you had an earlier slide about the young boys who committed suicide.
Yeah.
And sex exploitation.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I forget any numbers you might have with that, but I'd assume, maybe it's a biased assumption, I'd assume that's even higher with girls.
So it's interesting. So I didn't. This caught the attention. So there have been instances of grooming that have gone on with girls like that, where they convince them and they send them pictures and they say things. They get them and they threaten. Now the financial sexploitation has it's right now. Now it affects both sexes, but the reason why this caught my attention is because there was this. I was reading about it. I was already familiar with the behavior, but wasn't familiar with the increase of it. And so there was a study, a USA Today article. There was another one, actually. I think Katrina even sent it to me. There was I think it might have been one of those boys, or may have been another one. I don't remember that fell victim to it. And so I think the reason why that's got some traction is because girls were the first target of it, and boys became the second target. Now, what's interesting is that looking at, is a girl more likely to send an inappropriate picture of herself than a boy, or is a boy more likely to send an inappropriate picture of a girl? Really, all they're looking for is they don't care. I just want somebody to send me an inappropriate picture, and then I'm going to blackmail you for it. And it starts off usually like, send me a little picture. Hey, if you don't send me a better picture, then I'm going to send out the picture you've sent me. So then they send a better picture, hoping they can get, and they just keep getting them deeper and deeper and deeper. So.
It doesn't even have to be a real picture. They can
It
use
doesn't.
their likeness and
Yeah.
use AI to generate something.
So in one of those instances, the boy had there was a picture taken of him, and he didn't have a shirt on. And so what they did is, with AI, they filled in where he was wearing clothes to make him look like he was naked. And then now it's him in his house, and so now it's terrifying. Or they do that to entice the other person. They take a picture of somebody they know, they think they're talking to them, something along those lines. So it's terrifying. Terrifying. Any other questions? All right, our next session in just a few moments. What are we to do? What are we to do? That's what we're going to talk about. How do we handle this situation? So how do you protect your children? So we'll take about a 10-minute-ish break. Where is mine? Okay. And then we'll start back here in a bit. So thank you for your attention.